Welcome to the launch event of the 2023 Regional Refugee Response Plan for the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Before I hand over to Ms. Sandra Bisaka to open the session, we now invite you to watch a short video by Ms. Gugu Mbatha-Raw, actor and UNHCR's Goodwill Ambassador.
As a proud Goodwill Ambassador for UNHCR, I want to welcome you to this very important launch of the Interagency Regional Refugee Response Plan for the DRC situation. Over 1 million Congolese refugees are hosted across the Southern and Great Lakes regions in Africa. They have fled excruciating violence. The majority stay in 7 countries. I recently had the privilege of visiting DRC and meeting with survivors of such violence. The country has 5.8 million people internally displaced by years of conflict, especially in the east. I've also travelled to Uganda, which hosts nearly 500,000 Congolese refugees. But these people aren't just numbers. Every one of them is a human being with a personal story. I want to share one of those stories with you today. This is Amelie's story. I'm in a room full of real-life female heroes and survivors of sexual abuses in DRC. We are gathered to celebrate a university scholarship to ensure education for girls who are survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, a program supported by UNHCR. The room is filled with tens of typical teenage girls, and it's hard to come to terms with the fact that every one of them has been abused, each carrying her own untold trauma. I sit down to speak with one of the girls and learn her name is Amelie. She takes me back to the night 3 years ago when she was only 16. Armed men arrived at her family home. They blindfolded her and put her into a vehicle with her hands tied. When the blindfold was removed, she found herself locked in a room with many other girls. It was here that she was a hostage for 2.5 months. Raped daily by 5 male captors. They would lock the door for the day, then open it at night, and the nightmare would start all over again. Amelie tells me of the fateful day her cries were heard by some passing children. They alerted the Congolese army, who came to their rescue by breaking down the door. It was only then that Amelie discovered she was more than 300 kilometers from her village. Finally free, she started the long journey home by foot, a walk that took her 3.5 weeks. Amelie returned to discover her whole family had been killed on the same day she was kidnapped. She was stigmatized by her extended family and community for being raped, and then learned she was pregnant as a result of the abuse. But her grandmother took her in and cared for her and her baby while she continued her studies. 6 months ago, Amelie's grandmother died. Who will look after her daughter now? How will she finish university? Amelie has no money to buy food and nowhere to stay. The needs of all the girls caught up in the violence span far beyond education. They need food, healthcare, and safety. They deserve the support to learn and create their own opportunities in life. The displaced people in Congo who, like Amelie, have faced such trauma, continue to battle difficult situations, and the conflict in the DRC shows little sign of improving. I urge you to do everything in your capacity to help. Thank you for listening.
Good morning, Excellencies and distinguished guests. On behalf of the United Nations High Commissioner of the Refugee Regional Bureau of Southern Africa Office, I would like to welcome you to the virtual launch event of the 2023 Democratic Republic of the Congo Regional Refugee Response Plan, also called the 2023 DRC Regional RRP. My name is Sandra Bizaka. I am a mindset strategist and speaker. As a former refugee from the DRC, I am honored to be here. It is my distinct pleasure to be moderating this important event. I would like to thank you all for your participation. Seeing the number of people who have joined, I am very encouraged by the interest shown in the situation of refugees from the DRC in the neighboring refugee hosting countries. Today's program includes welcome remarks from Regional Refugee Coordinator for the DRC situation. The humanitarian situation in the DRC will then be further explained, but Mr. Bruno Lemarquis, Deputy Special Representative of Secretary General, Resident Coordinator, and Humanitarian Coordinator in the DRC. Their remarks will be followed by representation from host government representatives from Angola, Burundi, Republic of the Congo, Uganda, the Republic of Tanzania, and Zambia, highlighting how their government is providing protection and solutions to refugees from the DRC. An overview of the 2023 DRC Regional RP will be thereafter be presented. To conclude, we will open a space for discussion, welcoming input and questions from donors and partners. If you would like to raise a question during the event, you can do so in the chat box. The event will be closed by Ms. Clementine Kweta Salami, UNHCR Director of the Regional Bureau for the East Horn of Africa and Great Lakes. Without further ado, let me introduce to you Mr. Valentin Tapsoba, Regional Refugee Coordinator for the DRC situation and UNHCR Director of the Regional Bureau of Southern Africa.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Good morning to everyone. Excellencies, distinguished guests, partners, and colleagues, all protocol observed. I'm delighted to welcome you to the launch of the 2023 Democratic Republic of the Congo Regional Refugee Response Plan. The crisis in the Democratic Republic of the Congo continues to be one of the most protracted humanitarian situations in the world. As of November 2022, some 5.5 million people were displaced within the country, and over 1 million had crossed border to seek asylum in the region faced by deepening economic, social, and development challenges. Most refugees from the DRC are being hosted by Angola, Burundi, Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, Uganda, United Republic of Tanzania, and Zambia. Host countries have demonstrated outstanding generosity to refugees for many years, despite the enormous pressure on national services and infrastructure. The drivers of displacement in the DRC, which will be summarized today by the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General, Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator in the DRC, are unfortunately expected to persist. Let me highlight that the situation continues to be critical. Just now, on 26 January 2023, violent clashes, including heavy artillery bombardment, flared in the DRC town of Kinshasa, 150 kilometers from the provincial capital of Goma, leading to the internal displacement of over 117,000 people. The majority of those fleeing are women and children, some of whom have since been able to find shelter in warehouses, schools, and churches, or among host communities. Many, however, are still sleeping out in the open air, exhausted and traumatized. In 2023, some 916,000 refugees including those newly displaced and those in protracted situations, will continue to require protection and assistance, as well as durable solutions and development support. The impact of displacement on people's life will be heard through an account from UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador recent visit to the DRC. The deteriorating situation inside parts of the DRC makes it clear that the conditions are not yet conducive for large-scale voluntary return to the DRC in safety and dignity. While around 4,300 refugees, mainly living in Angola, the Republic of the Congo, and Zambia are expected to repatriate if conditions allowed for a safe and dignified return in 2023, most refugees from the DRC are expected to remain in their country of asylum. As such, it is essential that we continue our support to refugees in host countries, as well as systematically address the needs of impacted and vulnerable host communities. Refugee families have become increasingly vulnerable with each passing year of displacement, with increased poverty rates. Today, we will hear from host government representatives from Angola, Burundi, Republic of Congo, and Zambia, who will highlight how their governments are providing protection and solution to refugees from the DRC. During the 2019 Global Refugee Forum, many host countries have demonstrated commitment to keeping their border open for asylum seekers and made pledges to strengthen asylum space and improve refugee protection and solutions. In my role as Regional Refugee Coordinator for the DRC situation, I am committed to strengthening interagency coordination to complement government responses for DRC refugees in the region. In the spirit of the Global Compact on Refugees and in line with the Refugee Coordination Model, the DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan for 2023 will aim to bolster the protection response, provide multi-sector assistance, and integrate a solution-based approach by building self-reliance and resilience for refugees and host communities. My colleague, John Allison, head of the external engagement at UNHCR Regional Bureau for Southern Africa, will provide further detail today on the plan. In 2022, the DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan remains significantly underfunded, falling short of resources required by 64%. This funding shortfall led to acute gaps in the refugee response, compromising the quality of services provided. Despite this, the donor community has and continues to play a critical role in sustaining our collective effort to meet the needs of refugees in their host communities. In 2023, the DRC Regional Refugee Response Partners will continue engaging proactively with relevant government entities and stakeholders, including development actors, for a more inclusive and comprehensive approach. I very much look forward to continuing engaging with all of you so that our combined effort, ideas, and best practices bear substantive fruits to assist refugees from the DRC as well as the host communities in the region. Thank you for listening. Now, maybe very quick to introduce my colleagues, representatives who are here with me. I will start with Ms. Angel Dikonge Atangana, UNHCR representative in DRC. Thank you, Angel. Next is Ms. Prita Law, UNHCR representative in Zambia. Then we have Ms. Anne Elizabeth Raveto, UNHCR representative in the Republic of the Congo. And last but not least, Mr. Vito Trani, UNHCR representative in Angola. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Tapsoba, for highlighting again the ongoing issues in the DRC and for reminding us all that there is still great work to be done. Next, I am pleased to welcome Mr. Bruno Lemarquis, Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General, Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator in the DRC, who will provide a brief overview of the humanitarian situation in the DRC.
Good morning, can you hear me? Yes, okay, thank you, Sandra. Dear representative of the host government, dear representative from member states in the different countries, dear regional refugee coordinator for the DRC situation, dear UN colleague, dear participant, greeting from Kinshasa. It's a great pleasure to update you today on the humanitarian situation in the DRC. The last humanitarian briefing was given in October last year, and since then, the situation has worsened in many respects. Avant de vous informer de la situation humanitaire en RDC, je tiens à saluer la participation.
Before I inform you of the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I would like to please just welcome you and to say that I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues working with me on the ground here.
You might have seen it, you might have read about it, but because I'm here to speak on behalf of the millions of people whose life has been uprooted by violence, bear with me as I say this again. The DRC, the crisis in the DRC remains incredibly complex and is one of the largest, the most protracted and the most severe humanitarian crisis in the world. The scale of humanitarian need in the country places at par in the same category, for example, as Syria and Yemen, but it is often forgotten. The DRC crisis is essentially tied to the widespread insecurity and armed violence and the conflict that are affecting all aspects of life. Surely you have been following the rapid deterioration of the situation lately with the resurgence of armed violence in the east, mostly in the provinces of North Kivu, Ituri, and South Kivu, but also the emergence of new crises in areas that are normally peaceful, notably in the western provinces of Mai-Dombe and Kwilu, not too far from Kinshasa. We are also very concerned by the resurgence of hate speech. In March, it will be 1 year since the resurgence of the M23, which is having massive humanitarian consequences, including additional displacement of North Kivu, not to mention the many ripple effects on other provinces, particularly in Ituri and in South Kivu. I recently visited Goma together with the Minister of Social Affairs, Humanitarian Affairs and National Solidarity, Mr. Modeste Mutinga, and some members of our humanitarian country teams. We listened to the testimonies of women and men who cannot return home because of the insecurity and who depend on humanitarian assistance to survive. These people repeatedly told us that what they need most is peace, amani in Swahili. We heard heartbreaking testimonies of civilians trapped in a cycle of violence that has destabilized their life and shattered their dreams of a decent living. In the many spontaneous sites just a few kilometers out of the city of Goma, where many of the displaced by the M23 crisis have moved, we saw tens of thousands of displaced people with very limited access to basic services. We spoke to mothers who feared for their girls from early marriage or prostitution, which has become a common mechanism to cope with the extreme precarious situation they live in. The high level of overcrowding combined with poor living conditions also led to a recent outbreak of cholera. Armed conflict and gross human rights violations, including sexual violence and grave violation against children, continue to drive millions of people to seek safety far from home. More than 5.7 people are internally displaced, the highest number in Africa. And over 90% of them live in host communities, a proof of the incredible solidarity of the Congolese people. Across the country, 26.4 million people, or 1 Congolese out of 4, are food insecure, despite the country's impressive agricultural potential and wealth of natural resources. Acute malnutrition affects 6.4 million people, mainly children under 5. And preventable epidemics such as measles, yellow fever, cholera, and malaria continue to take a heavy toll on the population. Every hour in the DRC, 4 women die from pregnancy or in childbirth. The country has one of the highest infant mortality rates in the world, 70 per 1,000 live births. The multiple crises continue to put women and girls at risk of gender-based violence, including rape, which is being used often as a weapon of war. In 2023, of the 26.4 million people in need, the humanitarian community aims to assist 10 million of the most vulnerable across the country, but mostly in the East. Our humanitarian response plan, which will be launched next week, will have an estimated funding requirement of $2.25 billion. The humanitarian country team in the DRC is facing multiple challenges, in particular access, due to the high level of insecurity in some areas, due to the multiple violation of international humanitarian law, and also due to funding problem. Our HRP, our Humanitarian Response Plan for 2022, has been funded thanks to the generosity of donors, and I want to thank them here, but we have been funded at 47% only. The team is also committed and is working hard to ensure the quality of humanitarian assistance provided, advancing accountability to affected people, the centrality of protection, the transversality of gender-related issue, and community engagement. And the strategic objective of our response is to first addressing urgent needs, life-saving needs, and then improving living conditions for people to get back on their feet. Ladies and gentlemen, despite this picture which seems dark, I would like to tell you that it is not all negative in the DRC. On the contrary, and it is very important to nuance and to change the narrative about the country. The country is also a country full of opportunities, a country with absolutely impressive human and economic potential, a land of solutions. For example, at the current juncture, with the climate crisis and the need for energy transition across the world, the DRC is a solution country for the world, with the Congo Basin forest, the #1 forest in the world to sequestrate carbon, and the mineral resources, for example, cobalt, which is so needed to manufacture electric batteries, but also its arable land and its freshwater resources. So there is a lot of potential and a lot of development potential in the country. As you know, Pope Francis recently visited the DRC. If you have not done so, please read his very powerful statement. Just one quote from it. Room needs to be made for diplomacy that is authentically human, for a diplomacy where peoples are concerned for other peoples, for a diplomacy centered not on control over land and resources, expansionism and increased profits, but rather on providing opportunities for people to grow and develop. End of quote. At the time when borders are closing around the world, for those fleeing conflict or natural disasters, the DRC has also always been a welcoming country. The country currently hosts more than 500,000 asylum seekers from neighboring countries. Working to reduce humanitarian needs must be of utmost concern to us. It is critical whenever possible to address root causes, the most deepest root causes, to work on reducing vulnerabilities, to work on addressing development deficits that create the humanitarian needs, many of which in the DRC are chronic. And first, it's about the primacy of political solution. The current political processes related to peace and stability in Eastern DRC could have, if supported by all in a genuine manner, a direct positive impact on the situation. In particular, the so-called Nairobi process comes to mind, with its two tracks. There is a political track and a military track. The political track aims at encouraging national armed group, the many national armed group, to join the national, what is called the National Program for Disarmament, Demobilization, Community Reintegration and Stabilization. This is a critical program that deserves all possible support for its success. And the political track also aims at supporting the repatriation of foreign armed groups to their countries of origin. And then there is the military track of the Nairobi process, with the ongoing deployment of a regional force under the direction of the Community of East African States. We hope that this process and the other process called the Luanda process will bear fruit. Beyond conflict, it is crucial to address other structural causes and development deficits which lead to chronic needs. Conversation around the humanitarian development nexus in the DRC have made significant progress, but this conversation now needs to land and to yield more results. If we take just two examples, the food security situation, which is its many chronic needs, which is mostly chronic, but also durable solution for the return of IDPs when conditions allow, are two areas where common analysis and combined efforts could potentially make a difference. To close, just to say that advancing peace, advancing stability, advancing development, and advancing the SDGs are the most powerful weapon to bring this humanitarian crisis to a close. I cannot conclude without acknowledging the dedication of the UNHCR team in the DRC under the leadership of Angèle. Merci Angèle, à toi et à toute l'équipe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angèle. Thank you to the whole team.
Thank you, Mr. Lemarquis, for highlighting again the issues that still need to be addressed in the DRC, as well as the possibility that the country could be turned around. As mentioned by Mr. Valentin Tapsoba, Regional Refugee Coordinator for the DRC situation, 7 countries neighboring the DRC are hosting more than 916,000 DRC refugees. Now, before introducing the next speaker, I would like to take a moment to share my personal story as a former refugee from the DRC. I could stand and tell you about all the trauma and suffering my family and I experienced as refugees, but today I will not be focusing on that. Instead, I would like to tell you that although we suffered much hardship, what it produced in me was resilience and compassion. I developed a deeper compassion for refugees and other displaced persons. The life of a refugee is difficult. You never truly belong to any country and no place is home. When my family and I left the DRC, we were forced to travel illegally through many countries. We had deep fear of being arrested and jailed. We passed through Zambia and lived in the refugee camp in Malawi. We passed through Mozambique and finally making our way into South Africa. None of this was pre-planned or intentional. To the Zambian and Mozambican authorities, forgive us for breaking your laws. To the Malawian and South African authorities, thank you for hosting us. I remind you that, like any loving parent here, my parent also wanted safety and education for their children. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and I was 13 at the time, and the youngest was 1. The journey from DRC into South Africa took us nearly 3 years. I can say with deep gratitude that my entire family made it alive without being hurt physically or losing any life. This is not the story of many families who flee war and genocide. We have all managed to build lives for ourselves and to find safety and to become educated, though we are still working on the mental impact of the past. Today, I would like to take a moment to thank all of you on behalf of all the past and present refugees. Your work matters greatly. The lives of refugees will be changed through the decisions that have been made in this event today. Thank you all for providing safety, shelter, and food for our family in our time of need. We will now listen as government representatives share with us concrete example of how their government provide protection and solutions for refugees from the DRC. These countries and communities have generously hosted refugees and in the process made an invaluable contribution to the regional and international stability. This has come at an unprecedented cost, however, exacerbating pre-existing vulnerabilities and overstretching basic social services. Today, several host country governments continue to confront heightened economic and financial challenges whilst undertaking difficult reforms. Now, let me first introduce Mr. José Paulino Kuan da Silva, Secretary of the State of the Interior, Ministry of Interior from Angola.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Angolan government, and with great satisfaction that I participate in this meeting, and very briefly, I would like to highlight a set of initiatives which are being carried out in order to protect refugees from DRC. And I would like to give my welcome to all present here and everyone who's here remotely. In 1990, the Angolan state approved law number 08/90 of 26th of May about the bylaws for refugees. And in 1996, it was issued a presidential decree number 196 on 5th of January, which has created the Committee to Acknowledge the Right to Asylum, with the acronym CORRIDA, which will ensure the process of analysis and determination of the refugee status and provision of identification documents. As you are aware, Angola shares a very vast border in terms of land, maritime, and rivers with the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we have fraternal relationships between our peoples. The history of welcoming and receiving Congolese people in Angola started since the early years of Angolan independence. And even though we were facing armed conflict after 1975, the country has hosted and received the first refugees coming from Katanga, who came to establish in the provinces of Malani, Kwazulu North, and Luanda, and the integration has been taking place very naturally. In this very moment, I would like to address my remarks at this event, and I'd like to inform that the country receives some 19,712 refugees and asylum seekers coming from the DRC, and they are distributed amongst various provinces in Angola. Excellencies, the Angolan state, coordinating with the UNHCR, has developed very sustainable actions for security and protection to ensure the protection of asylum seekers and refugees coming from this neighboring country. The most recent case was the massive arrival of refugees from DRC, which between 2017 and 2018 coming from the Kasai conflict or in that region, which allowed from our side to open a human corridor, and we have installed a hosting center in the province of Lunda North, where there are around 6,343 citizens coming from the DRC. This center has infrastructure for social support and schools, medical centers, refugee camps, amongst others, and they were created with the support of the UN. Just to conclude, I would like to reassure the commitment of the Angolan state to ensure protection of the rights of all citizens in this condition of vulnerability. Here's to a united Africa. I salute you all, and I salute the unity of African countries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph, and thank you to the Angolan government for providing safety to refugees from the DRC. Next up, I would like to introduce Mr. Richard Umwina, Coordinator of the National Office of the Protection of Refugees and Stateless Persons in Burundi.
Mesdames, Messieurs, tout protocole observé.
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, on behalf of the government of the Republic of Burundi and on my own behalf, I have the honor and immense joy to express myself here to the UNHCR, as well as being with other delegations participating in this launch of the DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan for 2023. Burundi is the host country of more than 88,000 refugees and asylum seekers. More than 55,000 live in camps, while more than 32,000 live in urban areas. These asylum seekers and refugees enjoy a level of protection in Burundi that is also home to 1,100 people at risk of statelessness. And the database is regularly updated in order to comply with international rules on asylum. Our country has organized technical structures for the implementation of asylum seekers, applications, processing, and there are some transit centers being set up in order to be able to register and interview all refugees. The refugees are then hosted in urban centers and in 5 refugee camps in 4 provinces. Ladies and gentlemen, Burundi had the recent honor to welcome the High Commissioner in February 8th to 10th of 2023. And during this visit, the High Commissioner had the opportunity to visit the transit center, which regularly receives and welcomes asylum seekers from the eastern region of the DRC. We had the opportunity to observe how this transit center is currently overloaded by refugees still coming and crossing the border. It is with concern that the volatile socio-political situation in the DRC is being observed from our country, and at the moment generates a massive influx of asylum seekers. At this time, the government is facing major challenges to welcome and host this new influx. As a response to this influx, the government of the Republic of Burundi, within the DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan, expects the UNHRC to be able to mobilize partners at the multilateral and bilateral partners to mobilize resources to help with transit centers and to increase the hosting capacity. The mobilization of resources for the construction of new refugee camps is an emergency. We need funds to start work. The major challenge is the increase in the number of refugees that can be housed and welcomed outside of refugee camps. And we can notice that large areas of host communities are used for camps, and this land is also agricultural lands. So we need funds as well for environmental restoration in order to also help and support the host community. In order to promote peace, cohesion between refugees and the host communities, the government of Burundi has also developed an integrated community development project to encourage refugees to develop their own cooperatives and production associations and micro enterprises to generate some income. We also try to work with different projects financed by the World Bank to promote education and health, to promote a better inclusion of refugees. Within the framework of social protection, the government has developed a project to support the social aspects, promoting access to jobs in order to promote integration of refugees and their integration within host communities. The government of the Republic of Burundi would like to thank once again the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and its partners for their unwavering support in the repatriation and protection of refugees. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, our government would like to confirm without ambiguity that peace and security throughout the national territory is a priority. Several regional events are regularly organized in Burundi to confirm that trust with our bilateral and multilateral partners continue to be promoted. Before closing these remarks, I'd like to point out that the government of the Republic of Burundi reiterates its commitment to respecting all international conventions relating to refugees and asylum seekers. We will continue to ensure their protections within the limits of our means. The government of the Republic of Burundi would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event to launch the 2023 DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Richard, and thank you to the government of Burundi for your commitment to keep helping refugees. Before I call the next speaker, I would like to remind you to please keep your remarks to 5 minutes. Next up, it will be, let me welcome Mrs. Melanie Orestile Satukanzi, Deputy General Head of Department of Multilateral Affairs and Francophonie, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Francophonie and Congolese Abroad, Republic of the Congo.
C'est bon. Merci. Permettez-moi tout d'abord d'exprimer.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the UNHCR and thank you for organizing this launch event for the DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan. In 2021, the Congolese Parliament voted Law 41-2021 on asylum seekers and refugee status. The National Committee on Refugees, supported by the UNHCR, recorded as November 2023, 23,000 refugees and asylum seekers from the DRC. These refugees arrived in 4 different waves. The first wave followed what happened in 1997-1998. Those are mainly military forces from Zaire. The second wave in 2009, conflict with 130,000 refugees coming in the Equator province. In June 2010, in Kinshasa, a tripartite agreement was signed between the Republic of Congo and the DRC and the UNHCR. This agreement made it possible to repatriate 109 refugees. However, this repatriation process, came to a term in June 2014. The third wave was a wave in December 2018 with a conflict in the west of the DRC, with 10,000 people being displaced and crossing the border towards the Republic of Congo. And the latest wave from August 2022, due to a conflict in the Mai-Ndombe province, with 4,416 refugees. So these refugees are currently located at 200 kilometers from Brazzaville, and they are currently hosted in camps thanks to the creation of a response committee gathering all stakeholders, including the local stakeholders, the Red Cross and the UNHCR. We have now a new process with registration, interviewing, and monitoring of the refugees. We also promoted some different activities in order to enable refugees and children to go to school, people to have access to the national health system. In December 2022, as I said, 4,416 people were registered. 19% are women, 30% are men, and 61% children. Ladies and gentlemen, facing this situation, the Republic of Congo lacks means and funds to answer to the need of host communities and refugees. the Republic of Congo has started the whole process to have a recognition and granting rights to the refugees for those who arrived in 2018 and 2022. As you know, they can freely circulate within the country. They can be hired by companies, and they also have access to self-employment, and the government has also granted free schooling to 218 children. However, I'd also like to underline that in 2022, we also we started working with the community of DRC refugees living abroad in order to restart the repatriation process so that we can install another protocol to enable refugees to go back to their countries, for those, for example, who arrived in 2018, to create the right conditions for them to go back safely to their countries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Madam, for your kind words. I am pleased to hear that children have been sent to school. I am a testament that education can change the life of any child. And I am always happy to hear when children are being educated. I am pleased to give the floor to Acting Commissioner Mr. Douglas Asimlo, Department of Refugees in the Office of the Prime Minister from Uganda.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
They're unfortunate.
Directors of UNH here present and distinguished participants, all of you would like to take this opportunity to thank you for organizing this event about refugees from the DRC. Uganda continues to host an unprecedented number of refugees, keeping its borders open with over 1.5 million refugees today hosted in Uganda, including 860,000 children. In 2022, Uganda received over 146,000 refugees, both from the Democratic Republic of Congo and the South Sudan, and majority, over 98,000, are from DRC. In the beginning of this year, we have already received 10,000 new arrivals, with some 40,000 from the DRC. The refugee response partners in Uganda are planning to assist 522,200 refugees and asylum seekers from DRC in 2023. In addition, partners will also aim to assist some nearly 512,000 members of the host community. On behalf of the government and Office of the Prime Minister, I would like to express concern for the increase in levels of insecurity in DRC, which continues to forcefully displace thousands of men, women, and children into Uganda. In Uganda, tension is rising within communities because of the rapid increase of individuals and families who are dependent on the generosity of the local population. Uganda needs to be supported, especially in terms of the means to mitigate this peaceful coexistence and continue to keep its doors open. Despite being the largest host in Africa, Uganda now is considered one of the most underfunded refugee situations. In capacity of partners provide life-saving support to new arrivals and basic assistance to refugees has diminished, and this has manifested as significant reductions in food rations, cuts, and so on. We need to, the sanitation and water, healthcare, education in settlements is greatly affected. Partners continue to prioritize the delivery of essential services, but more involvement and support from development partners as agreed through the Global Compact for Refugees are needed. Uganda remains among the few hosting countries in the world that has honored its global commitments under the Global Compact for Refugees. We have one of the most progressive asylum regimes anchored in our legal framework that safeguards the rights of refugees across the board, except participation in our national politics. In Uganda, refugees live in settlements along nationals, and they are provided land for housing and cultivation, a practice that favors self-reliance and resilience. Asylum seekers from DRC are granted refugee status prima facie upon arrival. However, the complex set of challenges in my country is making this increasingly difficult to maintain. With poverty levels remain high, with 91% of the refugees considered highly economically vulnerable, and only 13% of refugees aged 15 years and above classified as self-employed. A staggering 90% of refugees are currently receiving food assistance. This situation is being exacerbated by the high costs of costs globally, particularly food and fuel markets. At the same time, less humanitarian funds for Uganda through the country refugee response plan for 2022 having been funded less than 50%. There has been a reduction in funding to key life-saving sectors like health, education, water. In comparison, there has been no significant increase into funds going towards livelihood projects to ensure refugees and host communities can become independent financially. Uganda needs support of international community to continue to maintain its progressive laws and forward-looking policies, particularly in these challenging times. We are hopeful that we will be able to take advantage of the opportunities of the Global Compact of Global Refugee Forum this year to build on the significant progress made by governments and other stakeholders towards the implementation of the pledges announced since 2019 and to announce new pledges. Uganda is proud to be a co-convener of the Global Refugee Forum because of our exemplary leadership in refugee management. This remains, however, a discrepancy between the ambitions of our government and the actual financing provided by the international community. This is jeopardizing progress being made. However, we remain committed to welcoming refugees who are running away from distress and civil strife from the region, including putting them into our national planning and systems, but this burden must be shared. I thank you, Chair, for listening to me.
Thank you, sir, for your words, and they are noted. Next up, I would like to welcome Ms. Numbilia Mumpolo, Assistant Director General and Protection Refugee Services Department, Ministry of Home Affairs, United Republic of Tanzania.
Thank you for good morning. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, on behalf of our director, the Refugee Services Department in the Ministry of Home Affairs, I would like to make some remarks on behalf of our ministry. United Republic of Tanzania will continue and receiving and protecting asylum seekers from eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo insecurity. 23, up to date, we have registered 4 families of asylum seekers from DRC. United Republic of Tanzania is optimistic that the election in December 2003 will be free and fair. On the other hand, we are requesting the international community to provide adequate financial support to all countries in the region which are hosting asylum seekers and refugees from DRC. Many thanks to all who organized this event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And lastly, I would like to introduce Dr. Prosper Mwango Gandu, Commissioner of Refugees, Ministry of Home Affairs and Internal Security, Zambia.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. May I take the thanks to the chairperson, the UNHCR, for organizing this nice venture. On behalf of the Zambian government, I wish to reaffirm the commitment the government has to the hosting of refugees across the world, also from our neighboring country, which is our brothers and sisters from the DRC. I wish to state quickly that in response to the influx of refugees from our neighbor country, DRC, in December 2017, the Zambian government established a new settlement called Mantapara in the Cherenge district of Ruapura province, which shares common borders with the DRC. This was also in line with the CRRF model. The DRC or the Congolese refugees who are coming from DRC and settled in Mantapala are being given 2.5 acres piece of land, those who can manage to farm, and they are also requested to form cooperatives and access the youth and the women empowerment from the government. I wish also to state that the Zambian government is so committed into hosting the refugees and taking care of them. And to that effect, we are acting the national refugees policy, which by next month it will come into fruition. The Zambian government has also included all the refugees and POCs in free education from early childhood to tertiary, to secondary schools, to grade 12 in Zambia. The government has also included them in the healthy sector. The government has also included them in the what we call fertilizer input support program. The Zambian government is ensuring that all the borders that is bordering with the DRC, Kaputa, Chiengi, Sumbu, Pulungu are remained open. And we are looking at the infrastructure so that they are upgraded to ensure that there is effective protection of refugees from DRC and other nations. The country has embarked on what we are calling MORASA, that is modernization of refugee settlement, to ensure that the laws in Zambia are harmonized, that is immigration laws, labor laws, and the Refugees Act, so that they speak in tandem to save the human rights of the refugees. We feel that the human rights for refugees we are not adequately taken care of. So with this effect in the harmonization of the laws, the human rights will be taken care of to ensure that there is freedom of movement for refugees, and they should enjoy their stay in the country, and they should also access employment. They should access also education without asking for the study permit as well as the employment permits. Zambia has also taken care of those refugees in terms of the durable solution from our neighboring country, Congo, those who wanted to go back. We have so far repatriated over 10,000 in Lazarus in working together with the UNHCR. The government also wants to appreciate the cooperation that we have been receiving from the UNHCR and other UN agencies and other partners in the execution and ensuring that the rights and the safety of refugees is provided. May I state that the modernization of refugees approach is meant to ensure that the refugees that we are hosting in the country are self-sustained in terms of their livelihood. And also the hosting community appreciate the relevance of hosting the refugees. With these few remarks, I wish to report to the August House that so far this is what Zambia is doing in terms of taking care of the refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all government representatives for having described the different ways your countries are providing assistance to refugees. Let us now turn to Ms. Joan Allison, Head of Eternal Engagement with UNHCR Regional Bureau for Southern Africa, who will give a summary of how the 69 UN and NGO partners complement host government responses in coordinated and structured manner. Ms. Allison will highlight the main element of the 2023 DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and good morning to everyone. I'm very pleased to present an overview of the 2023 DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan. Next slide, please. As been highlighted by the previous speakers, the crisis in the DRC is one of the most complex in the world. More than 1 million people have crossed borders to seek safety and asylum. The drivers of displacement in the DRC, including violence, insecurity, and development challenges, are expected to persist throughout 2023. The DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan is therefore an important planning, coordination, and fundraising tool to address these challenges and issues. The target population for the 2023 DRC RRP across the 7 countries is about 916,000 refugees and about 584,000 host community members. Of this total population, 51% are women and girls, 49% are men and boys, and around 16% are people with disabilities. Next slide, please. The Regional Refugee Response Plan brings together 69 partners to respond to the needs of refugees from DRC and their host communities. Of the 69 partners, 55 are national, international NGOs and faith-based organizations. This is about 80% of the total number of partners. We also have 10 UN agencies and about 4 partners, including academic institutions and other organizations. In the spirit of the Global Compact on Refugees, and in accordance with the Refugee Coordination Model, host governments steer the refugee response, while RRP partners led by UNHCR support and complement national and regional strategies. Next slide, please. The plan has 4 strategic objectives: enhance the protection situation for refugees and asylum seekers, provide comprehensive and multi-sectoral assistance to people who are forced to flee and the communities that host them, promote self-reliance and social cohesion, and invest in solutions that last. These objectives are underpinned by 4 cross-cutting priorities: accountability to affected populations, protection from sexual exploitation and abuse, age, gender, and diversity, climate change and climate mainstreaming, which are becoming increasingly an integral part of our work. Next slide, and this is the last slide. In order to implement the 2023 DRC Regional Refugee Plan, the RRP partners are requesting $605 million for 2023. As you can see here, most of the budget goes to protection, food assistance, social cohesion, inclusion, and solutions. I would like to end by thanking all our partners who have been actively involved at the country and regional level in contributing to the development of the 2023 DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan. Thank you so much for your attention, and back to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Joan. The one thing I learned as a refugee child is to always keep hope alive. The numbers may look a lot, but remember, many hands make work easy. So between all 69 UN and NGOs and the UNHCR, it is doable because there are many families, girls, children, and boys depending on us to make it work. We will now have a 10 to 15 minutes of open discussion where we will hear from you and address questions raised in the chat. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Jonathan Opio, Executive Director, Humane Africa Mission, a refugee response plan partner in Uganda, who will moderate the session.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Excellencies and distinguished guests, I'm very pleased to moderate today's session in this very important event. We would now like to hear from you on your comments and any questions. I see we already have 2 participants who would like to present their remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, let me please welcome Her Excellency Mary O'Neill, Ambassador of Ireland to Tanzania. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Dar es Salaam. First to say that Ireland very much welcomes the launch of the DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan for 2023. And we remain committed to supporting host governments and the humanitarian system in the Great Lakes region to provide humanitarian assistance to protect the rights and dignity of people affected by humanitarian crisis. I was particularly impressed by the interventions of the host governments outlining the work and the efforts in making refugees feel welcome in their countries. We know that many Congolese refugees have been living in neighbouring countries for many years, and they need durable solutions. So we welcome the initiatives that governments have shared and humanitarian actors have shared in promoting resilience and self-reliance amongst the refugees. Indeed, our moderator today is an example of the investment in education for refugees. So it is very welcome to hear the work of host refugees, and we commend them, host governments, and we commend them on this work. I was also very much struck by the interventions of Mr. Bruno Le Marquis and the opening intervention from Mr. Tatsoba, outlining the current situation in the DRC and the deteriorating situation and the continued rise and increase in humanitarian needs. This calls on us, I suppose, for a level of preparedness around 2023. That, you know, while we hope that humanitarian needs reduce over time, but I think for this year that there is a level of preparedness that is required of us all, and indeed is built into the regional refugee response plan. So we welcome that. Ireland very much believes that the humanitarian solution, there is no humanitarian solution to humanitarian crisis, and that we need to address the root causes of the crisis in the DRC, and that further work is needed to strengthen the humanitarian development peace nexus with a focus on reducing humanitarian need. We support and we laud the efforts of the EAC. Mr. Le Marquis outlined a number of processes that are ongoing, the Nairobi process, the Luanda process, to negotiate peace and security in the region. We have consistently emphasized the need for an inclusive political solution to this conflict, which has caused such huge humanitarian suffering and humanitarian consequences, including a continued rise in number of IDPs and refugees. So my message today is very much to welcome the launch of the plan, to laud the people and the agencies. I hear 67, I think, agencies involved in bringing this plan together and to assure of our committed support to this response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thank the Ambassador of Ireland, Tanzania, for her remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce Ms. Lorraine Lanenson, the Regional Refugee Coordinator with the Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration, U.S. Department of State. You are welcome, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for this presentation. It's been extremely useful. I've been furiously taking notes, although I know that this is recorded, so we can share it. My remarks are much the same as Ambassador O'Neill's. I want to thank UNHCR for its efforts. I've been in my position about 6 months, and I work very closely with the office in Pretoria, so I'm grateful to them, but also recognize that there is a huge effort that goes on in the 7 countries that are hosts to DRC refugees in DRC itself. So I give kudos to all the efforts of the UNHCR staff in trying to manage this situation, which is very difficult. I think for the US in 2021, we gave $68 million to several international organizations and an NGO in support of refugees in DRC, or in DRC actually, for the situation. And then that figure went up in 2022. But I think what many of us are seeing, I know UNHCR experiences this, we as the US do, is falling budgets as a result of the many crises around the world. And so I think that makes it all the more important to come together as an international community and really be creative. I think there were 59 partners that were international NGOs, but I think we're going to have to increase that number to really make a difference in this crisis. But basically, I just want to give my thanks again to UNHCR and the host countries, and then encourage continued support for the response in DRC. And I appreciate the regional response plan. I think that's a fantastic start. So thank you. And I will be sharing this information, I know, with my colleagues to start kind of tackling it and addressing the issues. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I want to thank the Bureau for Population, Refugees and Migration, the US Department, for your statement there. All right, since we do not have any, looks like we do not have any other questions, I would like to thank you all for your discussions. May I take this opportunity to invite Sandra, who will now introduce us to our last panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I would like to call to the floor Ms. Clementine Quinta Salami, UNHCR Director, Regional Bureau of Eastern Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, partners and colleagues, all protocols observed, good morning. As we come to the end of this virtual launch of the 2023 DRC Regional Response Plan, let me take this opportunity to thank our distinguished panelists and to express my gratitude to all of you for your great interest and participation. I was delighted to see the large number of participants that joined us today, and I leave this gathering encouraged about our collective determination to jointly address the needs of refugees from the DRC. The DRC remains one of the most complex and long-standing humanitarian crises in Africa. It is also one of the most neglected. Many of the affected populations we work with have experienced multiple cycles of displacement. Lives have been lost and generations have been left devastated with little hope for the future. And yet, previous DRC regional refugee response plans have remained chronically underfunded leaving many of us who work in the countries impacted by this situation, faced with impossible decisions as to who and what to prioritize. We are very grateful to host countries for their continued commitment to providing asylum, protection, and solutions to refugees. Several of these countries, Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda, I cover as Regional Director of the East Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes. I am encouraged to hear all our esteemed government counterparts here today assure us that they will continue to welcome refugees. More so, because I see firsthand the challenges they are facing. Food insecurity is compounded by rising wheat and fuel prices, as well as the adverse effects of climate change. Yet even in these difficult times, the African philosophy of Ubuntu, that sense of moral obligation regarding our responsibility towards others, is clearly visible in the continued hospitality displayed by individuals, by communities, and by governments hosting refugees. Ms. Sandra Zaka, in sharing her own experience of displacement, reminded us that as humans, we are all just trying to do the best we can for our families, to be educated, to find safety, to build a future. I thank her for reminding us so eloquently that refugees are not just statistics, that every refugee is a unique human being with dreams, hopes, and aspirations. I would like to appreciate the strong dedication of all RRP partners to enhance the protection of refugees from the DRC and their host communities and work towards durable solutions for this protected situation. Allow me also to extend a special word of thanks to our partners and colleagues in the field who are on the front lines, working in what are often extremely challenging circumstances every day. The war in Ukraine has demonstrated what is possible when the international community rallies behind a crisis. I hope to see a similar sense of urgency in the response to this RRP. You, our donors, play a crucial role in sustaining our collective efforts to meet the needs of 1.5 million refugees from the DRC and their host communities. But if we are to push beyond sustenance and move towards finding solutions, we will undoubtedly require more international political and diplomatic initiatives and the combined efforts of a range of actors working across the humanitarian development peace nexus. This point was also strongly emphasized by Mr. Lemarquis, the DSRG, in his remarks today. We must continue to build on this whole of society approach based on the principle of responsibility sharing and in a spirit of solidarity as envisaged by the Global Compact on Refugees. The second Global Refugee Forum, to be held in Geneva in December of this year, provides us with an opportunity to do so. I would like to strongly encourage all of you to continue to make progress on the implementation of pledges made at the 2019 GRF and to consider new and additional commitments with a particular focus on matching pledges. We are already witnessing a diversity of partnerships involved in this response, which include development actors, financial institutions, the private sector, and academia. We also gratefully recognize the work done by refugee-led, women-led, and faith-based organizations. I call upon all of you to come together in support of the 2023 DRC Regional Refugee Response Plan, which creates a framework within which to adopt and to scale up innovative approaches through our dynamic partnerships. Together, we have the power to create change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clementine, for your words, and I concur with the spirit of Ubuntu. I thank you all for your participation today. A follow-up email will be shared with all participants, which will include the recording of this event in English, French, and Portuguese, the 2023 DRC Regional RRP document, as well as two-page summary. The links of these two documents have also been included in the chat box. Thank you and goodbye.